price tag of $445 million, the A380 is the most lavish and most expensive plane ever built. But it hasn't been the game changer Airbus had hoped. Last year, Airbus had announced the end of A380 production in 2021. Production will end with just 251 A380s.
If you have a product that nobody wants anymore, or you can sell only below production cost, you have to stop it, as painful as it is. But we have not been giving up easily on the 380. And I think you know that we did various analyses in recent years, what else we could do with the 380. But it turned out that for measures like re-engineering or stretching the aircraft, we wouldn't find customers, or not enough customers.
And last month, we saw the last A380 rolled out assembly line in Toulouse, marking the end of A380 productions.
For sure, it's a sad day for all of us. I mean, on the 380, yes, we would have wished it, to be better.
I often get asked, what editing software do you use to edit your video? I want to share with you a new editing software called Wondershare Filmora 10, which is designed for beginners, so you don't need to spend too much time to learn how to get started when compared with other professional softwares. In Filmora 10, you can easily add, cut, and edit. There are lots of transitions and music to choose from. One of the great features is audio docking. It is only one click to quickly fade the music so your dialogue stands out. I often get asked, what editing software do you use? Filmora 10 came with motion tracking. You can easily track any moving object in your scene in just one click. Here, I'm using the function to put text next to the moving A380. Often, I shoot from a few different cameras, which all have slightly different colors. Filmora 10 can easily fix the color variations with one click to match color. Filmora 10 also allows me to do some advanced editing, such as keyframing. Thanks to the editable presets to make this the easiest keyframing experience around. Simply apply one-click presets for the easier keyframe experience or animate freely. Guys, the download link is in the description and you can try Filmora for free before you buy it. While the A380 was already in great decline before COVID, the smaller 787 and A350 new generation aircraft provided much greater flexibility and less risk for airline operations.
Unfortunately, it was the wrong aircraft at the wrong time. They were in a contest with Boeing. They wanted to be different to Boeing, but Boeing basically went long and thin with the 787 and Airbus went less range and more seats and gambled incorrectly, and they've lost.
It often was the first topic of discussion in the early 2000s when you met with the teams from either of those manufacturers. What do you think? And the 787 versus A380 story, we knew there was always more demand for units at the 787 and less for the A380, but it is a shame to see such an incredible aircraft falling out of favor and having what potentially looks like a limited life.
Clearly, the improvement on the very efficient twins, the large wide-body twins, in particular A350, but now also A330, somehow took some of the benefits the 380 offered at the point in time away, and therefore probably offers more flexibility at very attractive economic terms to the customers.
I invited A380 pilot and A380 engineer to talk about what is it like to fly and work on the A380.
My name's Andrew Barsby. I'm a Airbus A380 training captain. I have 11,300 hours total time, of which I have just under 5,000 hours on the Airbus A380. Having flown the A380 and the A320 in comparison, I found very little difference in the handling characteristics of the aircraft. One of the biggest comparisons is one thing that I like about the A380 is a less paper cockpit environment. There was less paper manuals and paper checklists to go through because Airbus have integrated a lot of their technologies into the avionics suite of the A380. From a reliability point of view, the A380 is a very reliable, very safe aircraft. I rarely had any issues while flying the aircraft over 6 years. I recall once when I had a go-around on the A380 on a line flight, we selected full power, which was the procedure at the time, and it has a massive amount of power. It has well in excess of what's required for a go-around. So Airbus have now put a technology on board that limits the amount of power necessary for a go-around. One of my fondest memories of flying the A380 is knowing that it's a fast aircraft and it gets up high. So you'll get airborne out of an airport and you'll see an aircraft that is going to the same destination as you, is getting up high and fast and racing that traffic and beating it home. That's one of my fondest memories.
Hi, my name is Rizwan Beg. I'm an instructor's engineer on A380 and I have worked on this aircraft for a little more than 7 years till these aircrafts were grounded. I've spent 7.5 years working on this aircraft, taking care of it, making it safe for the passengers and making it good to fly. I've done extensive checks on this aircraft, spent a lot of time working on it, and it's really sad to see it going like that. I hope the pandemic gets over very soon and we get our hands back on this aircraft. It's a very safe aircraft and should be flying at least 10 more years. It has a very good service life. Some of you might remember the incident which happened with Air France, and they had their engine number 4 blown out somewhere over North Atlantic, and the other airlines which were operating A380, they went on an extensive inspection program for this engine type. Then we had to remove the fan, and we had to inspect this fan blade hub so that there are no cracks or no discrepancies, and just to prevent these kind of things to happen again in the future. That was one of the great things that I learned during my career, and it was a great experience for me.
Personally, I love the quietness and the spaciousness inside the A380. Even the economy class on the A380 is far more spacious than many other planes. Because of the enormous room the A380 offers, the first and business class stands out, and there are lots of great, unique products only found on the A380.
One thing about the A380 is that when it gets onto an airport, it has a presence on that airport. I've had numerous times where I've flown into airports all over the world where I'm flying over the airport perimeter fence coming in for landing, and you see cars stop and people taking photos, and it is an aircraft that stops traffic. Plane spotters will travel all over just to see this aircraft. I've heard of people actually flying from different cities to capital cities just so that they can be a passenger on the A380.
Since its entry into service, the A380 has carried almost 250 million passengers. Before COVID, an A380 takes off and lands around the world every few minutes. The A380 fleet marks over 300 flights per day, operated on more than 120 routes and 60 destinations in the world. In just a few months, the fortune of A380 has changed drastically. The A380 now became an obsolete airplane that no airlines want to talk about it because of the very low passenger demand right now. With all the uncertainty ahead, airlines don't even know the A380 will be used in the future. Air France is the first airline to announce the complete retirement of the A380 fleet. Their A380 has an outdated product, so the company decided not to spend money to refurbish it and just to retire it. On the other hand, Qantas has a few A380 recently went through complete cabin refurbishment, and then they flew straight into the Californian deserts of Victorville for long-term storage. The Lufthansa CEO is very uncertain about the A380 future. He thinks the largest plane in Lufthansa fleet will be the 747-8. The Etihad CEO Tony Douglas said, I'm not trying to rule out the A380. It would break my heart even more to do so at this stage. But in the same way the 747 has been finally retired pretty much everywhere, I think we are probably going to see now an acceleration of the same with the global A380 fleet. Asiana from South Korea has operated a few joy flights of A380 over Korea that helps to keep the pilots and the fleet's recency. ANA from Japan is the last carrier to receive their A380. They have painted 3 of their A380 in the Flying Honu livery, all very, very striking. And they believe the A380 will continue to play a dominant role between Japan and Hawaii on the leisure flights. A few other airlines are still currently reviewing their A380 operation and haven't spoke about their future of the A380 fleets, such as Singapore Airlines, Thai Airways, and Korean Air. The biggest A380 operator is Emirates. They accounted for almost half of all the A380 produced in the world, with 115 currently in the fleet and 8 more yet to be delivered. Currently, Emirates are still flying the A380 to a handful of destinations like London, Paris, Cairo, Guangzhou, and Moscow. COVID destroyed the Emirates hub strategy that funneling millions of passengers through its hub in Dubai and then on to destinations around the world. There is simply very little connectivity right now with border closures and strict quarantine rules. It is not the short haul but the long haul flying that are affected mostly, and the A380 of course is primarily a long haul airplane. The open question remains what Emirates will do with all the A380s. There's still even 8 or 9 A380s hasn't been delivered.
On the future of the A380, like all aircraft decisions, it comes down to ownership cost, fuel cost, maintenance cost, and fit to market. As ownership cost reduces, any aircraft could potentially have a home. However, I'm not that optimistic about the A380 going forward because of market fit and these other cost issues.
According to the Qantas Airlines CEO Alan Joyce, he said the operating cost on 2 787 is still less than operating one single A380. Etihad Airways CEO Tony Douglas said the 787 Dreamliner is massively more efficient per seat kilometer than the A380, and everybody knows that. So we are heartbroken to see our A380s parked up. The CEO of Qatar Airways, Akbar Al Bakr, has spoken out his airline plans for his A380s. I don't think that the A380 will get back into the skies in short term. The growth rates will have to be the growth rate we achieved in 2019 for us to consider the A380. We don't think that we're going to operate our A380s for at least the next couple of years. We recently benchmarked the A380 against the A350 on many routes, and the results were astonishing. We found that on the typical one-way flights, the A350 saved a minimum of 16 tons of CO2 per block hour compared to the A380. Analysis has also found that A380 emits over 80% more carbon dioxide per block hour than the A350 on each of these routes. Sustainable, fuel-efficient fleets will be key to not only surviving this current crisis, but also essential to the future success of airlines. There is no doubt the A380 is a phenomenal feat of engineering. It is twice as much as a blue whale and also just as long as a football pitch, yet it flies. But the facts speak for itself. The A380 has not been a success in the broader sense of the word. In fact, the unit cost is much higher on the A380 than the twin-engine aircraft. My personal prediction is that more than half of the world's A380 fleets will not come back. Airlines are not short of planes right now. They will only use smaller and more efficient planes because of the lower demand. So most of the A380s will be write-off because of coronavirus from the airline's balance sheet. Just like the supersonic Concorde. When the Concorde retired in 2003, we took a step back in terms of speed. It will be sad to see when the A380 retire, there will be never a plane as big as the A380 in the sky. The A380 will always be remembered as a great whisper giant that offer incredible comfort to the passengers. But it also proved that it is profits that really drives an airliner to fly. The unforgiving coronavirus unfortunately delivered the final blow to the A380.
I really enjoyed working on this particular aircraft. It's huge size, and safety-wise, it's one of the safest aircrafts to fly on.
The biggest commercial airliner that will ever fly, there won't be anything bigger than the A380, was a privilege to fly. It was an honour to fly it, and hopefully one day in the future we'll get to fly it again.